Hey guys, here we are, the Quiggin Out MMA Podcast, episode 63. I actually remember to say the episode this time, and I've got a returning guest, the one, the only, the BKFC Strawweight champion, Hart Beltran. How we doing?
Yeah, I'm doing so good. Thank you for having me on. Super
No
excited to
problem.
kind of catch up and especially be around the holidays. It's some awesome, always exciting times to talk about.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I got to run into you back at BKFC 34. It's the first time I had seen you really, since the win over Paige Van Zandt at the Knucklemania. Um, what's it like walking around, with the belt? Because that was definitely an experience to see because you had a different kind of, I don't want to call it swagger, but it was definitely there where you're like, this is mine. I'm the champ. Like, talk to me about how that's been different for you.
Right. So I just want to shout out some of my friends. We always hashtag Gold Rush. So Elvin, Brito, Lorenzo Hunt, and Joey Beltran. We're all kind of did a training together and they were all champions. They've all gotten gold and we trained for gold. I'm like, man, I just need to be a part of this team and really earn it by having gold. And then, you see Lorenzo and he has definitely captain swagger. He's always having the belt and Elvin too. So Joey's definitely a lot more humble about it. But I'm like, man, I don't know. I really want to. I've always looked at those people and, I never thought like, oh, they're showboating or whatever. I'm like, man, like, it's not about being humble necessarily because when you look at the definition of being humble, it's putting yourself on a low scale of importance. Like there's other things that are more important, which granted that might be true, but it's sometimes like you deserve to give yourself a pat on the back and be like, wow, this is a huge achievement. This is a huge accomplishment. And only like 2% of the whole world's population are professional athletes. And then an even smaller percentage get gold championship belts, not alone, world titles. So it
Absolutely.
is definitely something super cool. It is still a little overwhelming, but it's one of those things once you put it on, you have to own it. And I've always kind of been that type of person, you know, in my, day job and during, with my friends, I'm just me, I'm Britain. But when I do get my hair braided, it's like a different weird sense, like character comes inside me. Like I really feel like a warrior. And then the same thing with the belt. Like when I have it, I really do feel like a champ. I feel that swagger that you said, inside. So it's definitely one of those things. If I'm gonna do something, I'm gonna own it 100%. The belt does get kind of heavy carrying it around, so I've avoided taking it on long trips. But it's super fun, and man, people look, they say stuff. I've had a lot of people be like, wow, that's a huge accomplishment. Or even cool enough, being like, really what I think, a lot of people see me as being the face of BKFC. When I do go out and people are like, what? You're bare knuckle. Like there's still a ton of people out there that don't know that bare knuckle is a sport that people are competing in and that is like growing super like rapidly fast. So it's a good like conversation starter. So it's definitely, better than asking how much does a polar bear weigh.
Enough to break the ice. Hey, I'm Matt.
Boom. You knew where it was going.
Well, it's funny because you talked about, only a small percentage, 2% are athletes, an even smaller percentage get a championship belt, an even smaller percentage are women fighting in bare knuckle, and then an even smaller percentage get a championship belt. So I mean, you're in an elite class, and I really think that a lot of those fights, obviously the fights with Paige and Pearl, um, well, personally, I don't believe that they belonged in there, but that's a whole new kind of a thing. Um, really kind of catapulted you. And then looking through it, like your next bare knuckle fight will be your 10th bare knuckle fight.
It
That's more
will,
than
which the only people that are up there are Joey and Reggie. I think they're the two top. They have 10 fights and everybody else is under that. So, you know, I think there's a couple of people that are sitting around 8 and 9, but I'm definitely on my ninth one. So it is crazy to know that my next one will be my 10th.
oh, absolutely. And especially being, on the girl side of it. I hate to say the girl side of it because you guys have really done it. And I'm going to tell a funny story that no one else knows about. So this is fun. So there was a different person at the fights for the BKFC 34, and she didn't know anything about fights. And this woman, I'm taking pictures, and she just kept asking me questions. And then she said, the two girls fought, and she said, "Oh, that blonde's gonna kick her ass." And I looked at her and went, "You don't know what's about to happen, do you?" For the next 10 minutes, all she kept asking me was, "Why do they do this? Doesn't that hurt? Do they get paid a lot? I wonder why they would do this. It doesn't make any sense." And I'm just going, because they're badasses. Like, that's exactly why they're doing this.
Yeah, it's a very tiny percentage of the population is for a reason. It really does take a special person to be a professional fighter and do that as a job. And, you got to really think at the end of the day, like, we're entertaining you guys at home. Like, we're going in there and risking bodily damage and so much other things just to, one, entertain you guys, but to show that we really are badass and that we deserve that respect for being such a small percentage.
Mm-hmm. Well, and with you being, I talk about this all the time. Bellator for years and years and years used a lot of their, promotions to build up their own guys, build up their own fighters, to really focus on that. And later on, I feel like they just kind of, grabbed a bunch of UFC, retirees, or grab some people just for the sake of, hey, look, this guy was in the UFC. I feel like Bare Knuckles really done that with you. And again, they put a lot more stock in you once you beat Paige. So did things really change for you, like personally and professionally after that fight? Or, have you just taken every fight as, I'm just going to continue to be the best until you got that belt, 3 months ago?
Well, I always think that. So that's never going to change. So I've always thought that. And right now I kind of have some qualms that are going on with inside me that kind of piggyback on specifically Paige and Pearl and more recently Beck. But, I do think truly that the Paige fight did change my life, both professionally and personally. It was a huge accomplishment. It was definitely more so my title victory. Like, even when I won the belt just in September, it wasn't the same feeling, which hence my crazy, like, I'm a feeling speech after that a couple people have forgotten about. But
no,
it
I'll never
wasn't
forget that. Never.
It was wild. That was like really it. Like, I just can't describe to you, besides if you guys go back and watch a video on how bizarre that was. I mean, I definitely wasn't favored to win. Nobody wanted me to win, and the promotion damn sure didn't want me to win. But they knew that, they wanted, I see what they were doing with Paige, and I do have to say hats off and a lot of respect for her not taking a soft landing. But at the same time, I really think in her head she thought she was getting a soft landing, So yeah. I don't think that she was really truly thinking that she was fighting someone that was as tough as me, And I think she made that little video clip that said even on her worst day she would be able to beat me, and so that was kind of like the fuel to the fire. Like, whoa, wait a minute, I hope you are on your best day, and I want you to acknowledge that you're at your best and train. You don't have injuries or illnesses, because I'm going to beat you at your best. And I really do. I think she was she was humbled for sure, and sat there and telling me to stay humble. But it was definitely one of those moments that I knew. I've heard it a couple times. Like, I'm one of those people that just truly doesn't give up and quit. I wish I could say, like, the first time I was told this will change your life, I acted on it. But I've been told that same speech a couple times now. And it's like one of those things that does get really defeating afterwards when you don't get the result you wanted. But it's just like, damn, you try again. And so to finally have it pay off on Knucklemania, on one of the biggest shows, in the fashion that it did, just the whole thing around it. Like, they did a little 3-part episode that you guys can watch on YouTube. That's the road to Hart versus Van Sant. And it shows a lot of insight, and it was really cool, and it was really well done. So to see myself in kind of like this movie form was like an out-of-body experience. And then fighting her, I mean, gosh, I really can't even tell you, like, what was really happening in the ring, besides I was so conscious and present to the point I was like, wow, I'm ready for this. Wow. Oh, we trained for that. Wow. She's doing it. Wow. This is working. Like, it was just like, it was so like bizarre. Surreal, and then at the end, even the ending was so crazy, because I remember thinking, if I don't knock her out, I know the world isn't fair. And there's politics and a lot of things at play. So at the end of the fight, I really was like, oh, I didn't knock her out. So that's it for me. There's no way anyone's going to say I won without getting a knockout. So I was already kind of like accepting defeat. My coaches were like, no, you lift your head up. You won. I don't care what they say. You won. But here I am thinking in my head, like, oh, I've been here before because I beat Beck when I fought her in BKFC too, and they didn't give it to me. So whatever. And that feeling doesn't really help. You can't walk around saying, yeah, you know, I got a split decision to Beck. I really won. At the end of the day, you just look like a crybaby, you know? So I really didn't want that. So when they announced my name as winning, it was like, wow, you know, it was really a bunch of feelings. Like, and really, I meant that speech, you know, projected to everybody who's watching, who has been in like similar places that I've been in. And, you know, I said that, and that's kind of where that thing came from. Cause I remember having like a very deep personal conversation before I fought Paige, and they were like, why are you doing the same thing? So to answer this lady's question who was talking to you, like, why would you do this? And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it because there's so many people out there that are scared or worried to take that next step, whether, you know, it not be in fighting, it can be in anything, you know, changing a job. Maybe you're sitting at a desk 9 to 5 and you're just freaking miserable and your boss treats you like shit. Like, but you're scared you can't leave. You know, you're in an abusive relationship and you have kids and you hate your husband, but man, you're just making it go by because you have to. Like, no, you can go and take this leap even if you think that you don't belong and no one else wants you, and you can go and do this. And if I have to go get punched in the face and sacrifice that to give everybody else maybe a little more courage or insight to life, you know, that's my why. I'm a feeling that I want to give to other people. And so I was telling somebody that before I fought Paige. So it just came out in a very bizarre manner and way because obviously adrenaline, you know, I tell everyone too, like, go ride your bike down the road, crash it, and then have the news come up to you and say, why were you riding your bike down the road and why did you crash? And come up with a nice logical answer that's going to be on the news that everybody's going to watch. And then you come back and we'll exchange post, you know, after injury conversations with like adrenaline and so many thoughts going through your head, you know? But yeah, from that point on though, it really made me, you know, it made me somebody. I think it was kind of like, you know, it's cool, and it gave me another thing to work for. But I think it wasn't still that I was Britain Hart. It was more like, oh, that's the girl that beat Paige Van Zandt. So I'm still kind of living in this girl's shadow. So then when Pearl came along, it was like, man, I was so, I mean, that's such a crazy behind the scenes story because that was such a knife in the back for that fight. But I had said earlier in an interview that she was in, you know, an easy fight because, again, someone's putting a, you know, it's not like I'm making these posts. I'm not going live and being like, Pearl, you suck ass. I'm going to beat your ass because you're the easiest person to fight. I don't do that. Like, I've never done that unless, you know, it's out of retaliation to somebody else. But when someone sticks a microphone in my face, you know, it's like, hey, I'm going to say what I'm thinking at that time, whether it's logical or I really thought it through. But really at that point in the time, I'm telling you my real honest answer. And so that's what I said. Anyway, she got really butthurt about it and went on this crazy training spree and was training really hard and knew that she was going to fight me. Well, the promotion didn't tell me until 3 weeks out. So I was in the gym, but I'm like, you know, piddle paddling. I'm just doing fun stuff because I love it. I'm not training camp and I'm not sparring. And so I had 3 weeks to get ready for that fight and went in there and was like, ugh. But again, another life lesson, you know, if you put your foot in your mouth, you got to, you know, you got to lie in the bed that you made. And I said she was an easy fight. So I'll take it on 3 weeks because if it's easy, damn, I should be able to do it in 3 weeks, you know? But really, when you're thinking at it on a elite and a professional and a business side, you know, it was a really stupid move on my part. And it was definitely taken advantage of. But hey, it worked out for me big time. So it made me even more like, ooh, like I'm the baddest bitch and the best girl in this league. I don't care about records. I don't care about what's on paper. I don't care who's beat me before. Because let me see those fighters take fighters against ex-UFC girls on 3 weeks notice just because they're honoring their word. Let me see those girls step in with any and everybody, you know, and be on TV with 3 weeks preparation and, you know, a sixth of the pay that they're getting. I don't see that, but, you know, I have bigger values and things that I'm fighting for and a legacy to solidify, which is just that, you know, I'm keeping it real. And hey, if we're going to go outside, we're going to go outside. I don't want to go to jail and I don't want to get in trouble. I'm a better person than that now. But damn, you know, if the rules were twisted a little bit, maybe we would, you know? So I'm working, like I said, we all have things we have to work on, and I'm working through that. And so I'm thankful that Bare Knuckle gives me that experience.
And gives you that outlet to beat someone's ass and not go to jail for it.
Exactly.
And I just want to jump back because I remember being at Knucklemania, watching you beat Paige and the whole thing with Jenny Savage, and how, from a fan standpoint, just looked ridiculous. Like,
Right.
what is even going on? And I really love that they gave you her as the next fight. They didn't spend, 3 years building up this rivalry or anything else. They were like, she caused problems. It was a pain in your ass. Let's go. And you
Well,
literally
actually, stop to cut you off. This is going to be kind of like, whoa. So this is actually crazy behind the scenes stuff. It wasn't actually that way. So yeah, you would think it's just a very logical reason. She came in the ring to say something, and boom, took that right away from her easy as pie, just dump water and say, get out of here. And, she left. So she didn't really say a word. I think it was kind of confusing. Like, who is this girl? But anyways, I asked because I'm pissed off at this girl. I'm like, let me fight her. Let me fight her. And they're like, no, no, no. And then they try to match me actually with Joey's ex-girlfriend because she was running her mouth. So they wanted that fight. And I was like, what? Oh my gosh, this is going to be some Jerry Springer shit. They're really trying to like put some personal stuff in it. So me and Joey's ex-girlfriend are like back and forth, and she's saying a bunch of shit. And I'm like, and it was just a weird little triangle. He was like, do you really want our personal lives to be blasted out there? Because this is going to get out. And, we just really want to keep it business. Like, here, I'm in here to fight another fighter. I don't want to all this like exes weird stuff. Like, that's when you're getting in Jerry Springer, which is really ultimately what the fans want and what people want. Yeah. So Feldman even put in an article, didn't even tell me who it was like, Britain's going to be very interested in this opponent we have for her next. Well, that was the opponent. And I'm like thinking, well, it can't be Jenny Savage because I'm begging for Jenny Savage. So she's not interesting. And then, so when they gave that to me, I'm like, oh yeah, absolutely. And then the girl came back, and this is again where you don't honor your word and you're not really as bad as a bitch as I am, because then she wanted, I want like 30 grand to fight her. And they were like, oh, well, wait a minute. Never mind. We're not going to do that. And it's like, gosh, what were you thinking? Run your mouth online. Like, there was even some comments where Christine was like, oh, I'll gladly step aside for this one. So that was the fight that they were really trying to make. But some other like little, personal things were at play, so that fight never happened. So then I was like, dude, Jenny Savage. And they were like, okay. I guess, we'll give it to her. So I had to fight for that girl. Like, they didn't want to make that fight. They wanted to make this other fight, but because they had promised me this fight and because they had put it out there, so they at least honored their word, even though, it wasn't really the plan they wanted. They at least honored it because they put out, oh, Britain's fighting, but she's fighting someone super interesting. And then they're like, oh, we said Britain's fighting, so here's Jenny Savage. So Jenny Savage worked out the way it did, which, I TKO'd her in 3 rounds. But still, I was kind of hoping that would squash it and leave it alone. But, I think she's still running her mouth online and saying things, trying to say that she's the true 115 queen or champ or whatever. So I feel like she feels robbed of her entitlement to that, with her 3 or 4 fights. And then again, the size really doesn't matter, because for her, when I fought her at lightweight, it was like I weighed in at 123 and she weighed in at 124. So she was really technically the bigger girl in that fight. And so I think she was trying to say at 115 it would be different beast, but I'm definitely not seeing that. But it's a hard thing because, again, like I said, I'm kind of the person that's like, hey, we can go and take it outside real quick. But then it's like, another thing, I hear a lot of other professional fighters, I take their advice and their comments on it. And it's like, this person doesn't do anything for me. And, if she wants a paycheck and she just needs a fight because she needs money to better her family, like, just come to me and be like, hey, Britton, I really need money for my family. And you're really the only person that's going to be a credible person for me to fight to get something, work with me. It would be a different story, but she's going out. She's definitely going about it in a very wrong way, which I think, like you said, anybody with 2 eyes and, a phone in their hand can go and do some research and see that it's like, and then people are going to say I'm I'm hand fed from BKFC and that they just keep giving me people, which is not the case. And I hate when people say that, because it's
I
like,
was
damn,
I
name
was
one
gonna
other
say the
fighter.
opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
Like
So it's crazy.
just for anybody who doesn't know, this has been your like lineup here. You've got Beck, Christine, Randine. I think people gave you some shit about because she
Right.
wasn't as established. Then you fight Paige, Jenny Savage, Pearl Gonzalez, Christine again, Beck again, and Teresa. And people can shit on Teresa all day long. That girl's tough.
Yeah.
And she
Super
comes in.
tough. And she was training for Paige. She was training to fight a UFC person, for months. So she had, 2 or 3 fight camps back to back. So, I really think that when she came in there, I was definitely looking at her as that, that she's going to come in her best shape and
Yeah.
that she was super tough,
And I respect you for that too, but anybody who says that you're hand fed hasn't
Yeah.
ever watched a fight, please.
Thank you.
Right. And that's not a fanboy, reality. Like that is legitimate. Just look at who you've had to fight. Because I think you're right. You have been in those positions where you weren't supposed to win. And it's a weird thing to be in a promotion and those be your bosses and be where you're like, I'm not supposed to win this. I'm gonna win this. And I think it gave you a newfound respect. And I mean, I definitely did see that just you walking around without the belt, at BKFC, people coming up to you and being like, oh my God, it's you, like being, and you standing next to Joey and people were only talking to you. I thought that was kind of crazy.
Yeah, it's funny. It really is. But, it's like, and Joey's different, definitely way different personality, way laid back and stuff like that. So sometimes I think that, but it is really cool. And we did go to Disney land, I think it was. We went to Disneyland and we were walking around and someone came up to me and they're like, I'm not gonna bother you because I know you're a new person, but I know who you are, and I just want to say mad respect. And I was like, oh, that's so cool. I told Joey, and then another guy came over and was like, oh, it's Joey Beltran. Let me take a picture. And I was like, okay. And then another person came, oh, can I take a picture? Oh, it's Britton Hart. Took a picture. And I was like, ha, 2-1. And then he was like, oh, we kept walking around. And then like 3 more people came over to take his picture. So it was like, he was like, oh yeah, 2-1. I was like, oh, okay. So he still
Yeah.
beats me. He still beats me in the people asking for pictures and that way. But I think in BKFC terms, I think it is definitely a different vibe because I feel like people really, again, resonate with that feeling of like not really supposed to be there, but not accepting no as the answer. And it's like, man, what is this girl like that has this tenacity to do this,
Mm-hmm. Well, absolutely. And that was going to be my next question. I was going to try and segue into the husband thing earlier, but you were talking about abusive husbands, and that segue just would not have worked at all. Like,
Yeah.
it was terrible. Talk about like how the two of you met, because I'm sure you've told this story, but you and I haven't gotten to have a real conversation since everything's happened. Tell me how you guys ran into each other and how that evolved into what you guys have now, where it's got to be super helpful with you both doing the same job basically and being able to help each other. Not only the physical aspect but the mental aspect as well.
Right. Yeah. So it's kind of funny, people and think what, like I said, everybody has different personalities, but who goes to a BKFC event solo, like totally by themselves? This person when there's like an agenda. And so for me, it was Sheena Starr specifically who was talking shit about me online. And I'm like, not the person, even despite what people think, I'm really not going to argue with you back and forth on a keyboard. I'm not going to call you. I'm going to show up at your front door and be like, yo, what's going on? Like, if you have a problem, we need to solve this, either however way we need to solve it. And so anyways, I had made a post and put that warning that I'm coming down here and the same things that you're saying, I want you to say to my face, and you're not getting in between what was supposed to be the Paige fight. So anyways, I'm coming down there like, oh, I'm just ready to go. I don't care who's there. It's probably best that I'm there by myself. And Joey's down there because he's just the champ, and he's just doing champ shit. I don't really know why he came by himself, but whatever. Our assigned seats in the VIP section were literally together. So it was like literally serious Blind date matchmaking 101. Just put your assigned seats
Wow.
next to somebody and see if it works, because it was just like that. And then you know, I know a lot of people in BKFC because I try to make it my point to like know everybody and at least have a conversation. But he was one, because he is so laid back, or he's kind of one of those gets the job done and then leaves. You know, he doesn't really linger around. And so I never had talked to him before, but I knew who he was. And so I
Yeah,
was
of
like,
course.
dang, I don't know what to say to this guy. Like, what do I say? So I kind of made myself look stupid. And I was like, dang, I'm sitting there like, boom, boom. Like, why did I say that? Like, you're such an idiot. And he was like, you want to go get a drink? I'm like, yeah, I do. Let's go. So we went, and which is definitely totally unlike me. Cause again, like I said, when I have something on my mind, an agenda, like that's what I'm there for. But I was so nervous and like about all the other things. I was like, dude, maybe this is the best thing for me. So
Yeah,
we went
absolutely.
out and I was just kind of telling him a little bit about my life story, and like we just connected. And by the time we came back, it was like we were high school friends, like best friends kind of vibe. It was wild. Like we were making jokes, fake commentating the fight. Shaq was there. I went and got my picture with him, and me and Joey were talking back and forth about some funny little things about that. And it was just super cool. And then after, when we left, you know, he met me at Starbucks the next day at the airport and was like, yeah, I'm probably never going to see you again. But it was really awesome. And so he gave me a kiss and walked off. It was kind of like a little movie thing. I was like, wow, like, you know,
They're like,
Joey
oh,
Beltran just
okay.
kissed me and then walked away. And I remember sitting there thinking, being like, I'm gonna see him again. And sure enough, when I got the Paige Van Zandt fight, since you know that girl had nothing to say to me, that was easy. So I got the Paige fight, and I went to California, which he's from San Diego. So he actually drove up to train with me one day, which was super cool. And we kept it like super friendly. Like, you know, he visited me in the locker room before the Paige fight. And then we just kept in touch more on like on a friend, kind of like platonic level. And then I saw that he moved to Miami, and I'm like, oh, I just moved out to California. Why are you moving to the East Coast? He's like, oh, you got to check it out. You'll love it. And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, oh, I'll buy your plane ticket. I'm like, well, yeah, okay. Say no
Oh, okay.
more.
I mean, who says no to a plane ticket? Like at that point, like
Right. Like, wow, okay. You know, at that point in time, I'm like, what do I got to lose? So went out there, and it was like, you know, definitely those feelings that got cultivated through friendship, and just an understanding as being a fighter, and some of those moments that we had together on that level. It just, when we got to be ourselves and be on like a lovey-dovey, it was like Cupid, you know. And I remember calling everyone up from California like, oh, I can't believe I've done this. Like, I would never flake out, and I would never choose a guy over my career and make the same dumb mistakes that I made in my past. Like, I'm not doing this. But it was different. It was a different feeling. It
it
really
was
was. And I was
different
like, I
this
can't
time.
believe I'm doing this, you know. So for all those people, like, believe it or not, I know people hate seeing all the gushy mushy stuff from me and Joey, but I used to be one of those people that was like, you know, but secretly wishing I had it. And I would tell people all the time, I'm like, dude, I'm married to the game. Like, I'm not boyfriend, I'm not girlfriend with anybody. Like, I'm not doing any of that stuff. Like, I am here for this and one thing only. And you know, so to have that whole mindset switch on me from this person, I was like, wow, like it has to be something. Like, it has to be something like deeper, you know. And when I called California and told them, they were like, dude, girl, you are in love. Like, we
Yeah.
just want you to be happy. And it was like really at that point in the time, that's why I say, like, this has really changed my life. Not so much fighting, but because I took this hard road on bare knuckle fighting, it put me in a position to now I actually know what unconditional love feels like. And I never had unconditional love ever until after, you know, I don't want to say after the Paige fight. It was during the Paige fight. And I think that's why I won that fight, is because from being someone who has a chip on her shoulder and so much hurt and stuff deep down that I like, you know, keep tucked away, to
Compartmentalized.
have
Yeah.
somebody
Yeah.
give me, yeah, to have some, like my coach, like shout out Coach Haas, like out in California, really opened my mind and eyes to what like unconditional love looks like. And then when I was taught how to love myself, and when I was taught how to love freely, it made loving someone else and being the right person for that individual is like, you know, you just, again, when you're not looking for it, you'll find it. And that's exactly what happened with me and Joey.
And that's crazy because, going back to the Page fight, so you've had 6 fights since then, 5-1 since then. I mean, I don't think anybody can say that you lost a step at all. If anything, you gained it. And I think that was probably what the fear was, is that you commit yourself to somebody, the fighting takes a back door. But really, who better to be with than somebody who's a bare knuckle fighter too, in the same organization, who understands every aspect.
Right. Yeah, it was even like that with the so after the Christine fight, it was really tough. And then I got the Beck fight and I was just like, mentally distraught. It was really, really hard. And it was just a lot of mental chaos, even being this, refined, awesome person I am today. But still, we're always a work in progress and there's always old things that kind of resurface. Anyways, that was the case during that whole fight camp in that period from February to June, basically, which is a long time to be in mental turmoil for
Yeah.
anybody. And so after that fight, I was like, dude, I'm done. I'm glad I won. It was awesome. But the victory over her wasn't like, the victory over Paige. It wasn't that feeling. And I was like, dude, like I don't know what I'm doing this for anymore. So we went home. I was like, I'm done fighting till 2023, which hasn't even happened yet. And 2 weeks later, I get a phone call and it's the 115 belt. And I'm like, no way. Like, no, like there's no way. And I look at Joey after I told him I'm done with fighting. I'm done for, until 2023, not forever, just for a period. And I was like, he's like, what do you want to do? And I'm like, dude, I can't say no to greatness. Like, what? And he was like, well, let's go. And we were like literally out the door the next day and he supported me 100% through it. So it was super great. And that's hard because a lot of spouses you've seen, and I know a lot of people can relate, when you work and then you're, dinner's going to be at 7. And then it's like, you show up at 8 and it's like, man, sorry, so-and-so didn't show up. So I had to cover their shift until someone else could come in. Like those things happen and it ends up hurting the other person's feelings. And they're like, yeah, but you didn't do what you said. You weren't on time. That definitely gets hard. But, when you're in the position of being like a doctor or working in the food industry or the medical industry or the fight world, it's not always the case. Things are always constantly changing. You have to be adaptable to change and you have to be ready at any moment. And it's a very hard concept for a lot of people to grasp. So being with him is super, it's super helpful and awesome to know that, hey, things could change like that and that's okay. And not a lot of people are okay with that.
No, and I think that's amazing because you look at, the first 3 bare knuckle fights, 2018, 1 fight, 2019, 1 fight, 2020, and then it was like 2021, you're like, all right, I need 3.
Yeah.
2022, I need 3. And I know you're campaigning for that knuckle mania. And I was gonna kind of like back it up, like the mental aspect of dropping the extra weight. I know you said you weighed in at 123, so dropping the straw weight, not that big of a difference, but at the same time, it is. So, like, was it
Right.
kind of something that you were like, oh, I don't know if I want to fight it this way, or once you got there, you said, no, I'm fine here.
Oh no, I want to fight it that way. Like, my boxing weight is definitely 118. Like, that's absolutely what I fight at. And before I fought bare knuckle, I walked around at 120, and then when I was fighting back, I was really one of those people, like, even, I didn't want to be a dick about it, but sometimes I would, I'd be eating honey buns and donuts and pizza. I post pictures of me stuff, when I knew, like, somebody was cutting weight, I'd be like sitting there eating a whole pizza. So I was definitely that person, but I had to try to put on that weight. It was very, very hard. But then once I put it on, once I reached 130, I was like, I hated it. I couldn't stand it, and it made me feel slow. Everybody was like, wow, I can feel your power. You're hitting way harder. But I was like, I don't feel good. Like I feel heavy and I feel slow. And I just don't feel like I got like the speed that I did at 120 or when I was walking around at 125, it was, it's like putting a 5 pound, like we think, logically 5 pounds isn't a lot, but go put a 5 pound weighted vest and do your normal day activities and you'll see a little bit of a difference. It does, it wears you down. And plus I wasn't doing it the healthy way, because if I eat healthy food, guess what? I'm going to be like 116. So even to this day, like I still eat, like a good balance. I definitely choose healthy things and healthy fats and stuff like that. But if I just ate salads every day and try to cut weight like some of these other fighters who like have 5 sticks of celery, I would be like, no joke, like I probably could fight at the atom weight, and drop to 105. But I was doing it because, again, there wasn't a 115 class. There was only 125. And no matter, BKFC kept telling me 115's in your future, 115's in your future. And they didn't do it. And so when I finally came home and they're like, oh, 115's in your future, actually, in 6 weeks. What do you think? I was like, oh, I have to take it. So yeah, the weight was no problem. The weight was like super duper easy. And I weighed in at 113. So I just did that kind of like to show people. I could have walked in there at 114, 114.9 or something like that. But 113 is me just cruising. I wore a sauna suit one time to make my coaches happy because they were like saying some stuff. Yeah, I wore it for like 30 minutes and then took it off. I was like, screw this. I'm not wearing this thing, So, but yeah, I did want to fight at 115. It is different, I think. But then again, not so much because I don't think I've really had that experience in bare knuckle because I really look at Charissa as a 125. I know she can do both, but I don't really think she's a true 115er. I think she's a 125er. So, I was definitely cautious in taking that into consideration, that she was going to be the bigger girl. And like when we rehydrated the next day, she rehydrated at 130 and I'm, 122. 8 pounds isn't a big difference, but when you attach it to this, it could be the difference between a 5-pound dumbbell to a 15-pound dumbbell. What hurts more?
Yeah, exactly. And I think what gave you a decided advantage there is that you had fought at the higher weight class. You knew what it was like to fight those girls at the higher weight class. So it wasn't going to be a surprise, but you're right. You see fighters now, we talked about it before in the show, like when BJ Penn was fighting at 155, like he was cutting from like 170. When he was fighting at 170, he weighed like 170. These guys now are pushing 210, 215, and when they rehydrate, there's a 20, 30-pound difference. So like you said, that's a big difference. But when both of them do it, okay, it's not so much. But like you said, 8 pounds when you're a strawweight, it's a lot of weight.
Right. Especially when you're a female too, it's just different. Like weight is different on us. If a guy loses 10 pounds, you might not notice it, but if a female loses 10 pounds, you're going to notice it like that,
Mm-hmm. Well, and that was going to be my next kind of question. I don't want this to come off the wrong way because he might be able to hear me, but I'm like, was you dropping down kind of a motivator for Joey to take a difference in the drop down to his weight class because he had been fighting at heavyweight for so long?
No, I think honestly it was the same exact scenario with me and Charissa. I think that Joey was kind of like, he had a pretty bad concussion from his last fight. And he was like, I think I'm done to 2023. So he said the same thing. But during my fight camp, I'm obviously working out all the time, sweating, and he's right beside me. And then I'm eating healthy. So, it doesn't, he'd be a real dick if he was like, yeah, let's go to McDonald's every day and eat it in front of me. But, every once in a while he would. But other than that, he kind of followed the same eating plan that I did. So he was just losing weight with me naturally at a very slow burn. It wasn't like a drastic like lifestyle change. It was like something he was used to. So during my fight camp, he was actually presented with, well, hey, what do you think about going to 205, with Houston? And he was like, wow, I guess I could do it. I'm really not that far away from it. I've done it before. And I was like, yeah, I think this would be a better, I think it would be a better situation, especially with heavyweights. You got to give so much respect and hats off to them because that weight discrepancy can be big. If you're, right at 220 and 230, like Joey, like you could be in danger fighting someone that's like 260, 270. Right now, it's kind of like up in the air and a good conversation on, is there a cap to heavyweight and bare knuckle? You see Big Ben weigh in at 295. Like,
I wonder who we're talking about.
Yeah,
the guy
so
that'll never be champion.
Right. And Joey's competitive too. Like he doesn't want to do this shit just to be like, he wants to get the, he wants there to be like an end game and a purpose to it too. So, it was kind of looking like it would be a good, a good move and something new, and I'm sure maybe I inspired him a little bit, but I really don't think so. I think it was just all on his own, just getting his opportunity to be great.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the weight discrepancy, because if people, like, most people don't realize that you could be 207 pounds and be a heavyweight
Yeah.
to 266, unless you're Ben Rothwell and you fight at 295 and you punch people while they're on the ground. But I didn't say that. Sorry, that stuff bothers me. Like, I feel like it happens. It doesn't happen a lot, but you see it happen and you're like, guys, you need to, it's got to be hard to not want to go for that takedown, to not want to continue with those punches in that moment. It's easy for
Yeah.
us to say that now, but I'm like, you got to go in there as a professional. And I think you're right about that. The weight discrepancy, there needs to be something in the middle. There absolutely needs to be something in the middle for those guys from like 210 to like 235, like somewhere in that, just a small little range.
Yeah,
Then I
I
think
mean,
would be
that's
great.
still a bigger range than anybody else. I mean, I
Yeah.
agree. I think, it should be a super heavyweight that's 250 and above,
Yeah.
but you're still looking like you said, you can weigh in at 202 or not 202. So that wouldn't be, you could be like, 207, like you said, and then all the way up until 249. That's still like a, 30
Yeah.
plus advantage, which is crazy. And does, does play a huge role to, like, believe it or not, it does.
Well, absolutely. And I'll go back to UFC, what am I, 92, 94? I think
Yeah.
92. When Couture fought Brock Lesnar, like Couture went in there at like 220 and Lesnar weighed in at 265. And I was like, on fight night, he had a good 80 pounds on him. And I
Right.
said, that isn't fair. There's no other weight class that allows that. So we kind of got to break that up. But you bring up the weight classes, and it's something I'm dealing with now, because going into my next segue, jiu-jitsu, 230 plus is where you compete for mine. And I don't want to do that. So that's what I'm working on now. And it's a perfect segue into seeing a post of somebody wearing a white belt. So
I
I'd love to talk
know.
some more about this, because that is one thing nobody's going to talk to you about, is you doing jujitsu as a bare knuckle fighter. Like,
Right. And I think, so I have a lot of different reasons why, it's not one main reason. It's kind of like a collection of everything, but hey, like that's all sometimes you need is just little sparks, and sparks, add together and they make something great. So, yeah, definitely tons of reasons. One, it's cool to learn something new and exciting, especially being from something, somebody like me. I'm a adventurer, a thrill seeker. I'm an adrenaline junkie. Like, I'm all those things. And so I like learning new things, and I'm almost like tapped out. I'm like, man, well, I've done everything. What have I not done? And so this is something that I really, I went to an MMA school. So it wasn't really, a jiu-jitsu school, but an MMA school that had it once a week. So I was doing that. It was like Monday was like BJJ, and then Tuesday was kickboxing, Wednesday was striking, Thursday was wrestling. And that shit was hard. But that was my like very soft landing into it. Since then, I've been learning, obviously, Joey is a brown belt. So then there's the other little motivation and spark. Well, he's a brown belt. Like, maybe I want to try to be, a brown belt one day and have the same knowledge that he does, and that it is useful. You see all these little cool video clips, and it's funny. I don't know if it's coincidence or like our phone listens to us and my phone knows that I'm doing BJJ now, and like all these cool videos are popping up. Yeah. But it's like, 67-year-old lady, fought off an intruder with her black belt skills. And it's like, wow, like these are like skills like we could actually use and need one day. And one, I'm already like deadly with these hands. Just imagine, I get you down the ground now. It's going to be even more deadlier. So I'm excited for that kind of whole thing. But I will say this, my main focus on it is looking at BKFC now. And, it is, again, kind of, I look at like where I was successful, and, it's never losing that. And it's kind of that whole me having the chip on my shoulder, trying to prove people wrong and do that. Well, I've proved everybody wrong. So now it's like, damn, now what? Like, I don't have anything to prove wrong necessarily, besides a few little things that I'm still working on. But, it's going to come with things like this, new motivations, new inspirations, and things that I love. Because you have to love something to really like dig deep on it. Other than that, it's like, meaningless and doesn't serve a purpose. But so anyways, I'm seeing all these girls in BKFC that are super heavily promoted. And what is their all common factor that they have besides OnlyFans? vote. It seems like everybody does that now. So whatever. But
I was gonna say, like, your track record with OnlyFans fighters too. So
right.
like...
So now there's everybody's doing OnlyFans. So it's not even like a thing anymore. But they're UFC girls, like these UFC girls that are good on the ground or good kicking, they're getting these huge contracts, and to bare knuckle boxers aren't getting huge contracts. Like, man, I was a good boxer. I was ranked number 1. People forget about that. Like, I'm not a soup can, like, journeyman that came from boxing. I was ranked number 1 in my weight class. I fought world champions in boxing. So, like, my stand-up is strong, but I do have more of a brawler technique, which a lot of people love in boxing. So it is what it is. But these people that are getting these big contracts and big promotions are UFC people. So I'm like, okay, well, if you're not going to promote me from just winning and beating and doing the impossible, maybe I should just go and fight in the UFC and then win a couple and then come back here and be like, hey, look who's back, pay me now. So
like, I'm not Britton Beltran, BKFC fighter, former boxer. I'm BKFC UFC boxer now. Like, what do you got for me?
Right. And that's what they're gonna be like. It's not gonna be like, wow, Britain who's faced all the biggest and baddest bitches there is, Britain who was ranked number 1 in professional boxing. It's gonna be like, oh my God, the UFC girl. Look, they're like, even this, a couple girls, like, they're like on losing streaks, like lost their last 3 or 4 fights, and it's like, oh my God, huge signing. You won't believe who we have now. And like, not any disrespect to them, like, I get it, but the only chip on my shoulder is coming from, are you being paid more than me? Because I earn and work to my spot. Like I said, the best analogy is like when you're working at a business. Like, some people are like, oh, don't be salty. It is what it is. But I'm like, look, you would feel the same way if you were working in a company just behind the desk on a keyboard and you were there for 10 years. And then all of a sudden the boss's cousin came in and got promoted to, vice president before you. Like, you would feel some type of way about it because you worked so freaking hard day in and day out to get where you're at. And then someone who just has this,
a connection.
Yeah, like, it really isn't a defining thing. It's just like a networking basically thing. So, anyways, like I said, it's not anything I'm super salty on. It's just thoughts that are formulating in my head and then I think on. And I'm like, well, you know what? Maybe it would just be better if I went over to UFC, won a few, and then came back and was like, all right, now what do you guys got to say? So anyways, I think it would be really great. Plus, it's just really inspiring watching, just women fight in general, whether it's the stand up on the ground, Muay Thai is super fascinating, kickboxing. I really just love it all. And so for me to be able to be competitive in all martial arts and all combat sports, I just think it would be the ultimate dream come true for myself personally, being like literally someone who views herself as a true, real fighter all the way through.
Yeah, and that's crazy. And it's funny you brought up, older women doing jujitsu. There's the jujitsu grandma who I actually had on the show a few episodes ago. And again, the woman picked up jujitsu at 69.
Right. And how motivating
mind-blowing
is that? Like, for you guys, like, you don't have to like, oh, I didn't start, or I don't know what I'm doing. Like, it's never too late. It's super inspiring to go and make those accomplishments. And it's really fun. The school that I'm at is a Checkmat in Lynchburg, Virginia. And they're so nice and great to work with. And man, like, we'll roll for like 2 or 3 hours. And I'm just always constantly learning. But seeing their energy is more of like what the positive in this beginning white belt stages. So I'm really just pumped to go back. And now it's like kind of a new goal. I'm like, how can I make this extra competitive? Like, what's the fastest you can get your brown belt, and they're like, some people have mixed feelings on it. And it's definitely, again, a great conversation on different viewpoints on what you should follow. But, I want to be like, maybe that's like a goal. Like, I don't want to do it like shortcut way. Like, I want to earn it and I want to have it the right way. But it's like, can I be one of the fastest females to get a brown belt? Like, is that something out there? Like, is the Guinness World Record book gonna like put me in it? So these are all things, like I said, little sparks that really drive my what can I do to just be better, be the best, or great. Just great is, awesome.
Yeah, and I think what I love about jiu-jitsu is the belt doesn't lie.
Right.
Somebody could give you a brown belt if you didn't earn it, and you get out on that mat and they're gonna know.
Right.
I know starting, like, it's funny because I'm like in the middle of you and Joey, because you're the white belt, I'm a 3-stripe blue belt, and he's the brown belt. So I'm like in the middle of that journey. And I remember when I got my blue belt, I was like, "Are you sure? Like, I don't know if
Oh,
I'm ready for this. Like, I don't know." Because I wanted to compete as a white belt. Like, that was my whole goal. And I remember the first time I rolled as a blue belt, this unreal confidence came out of nowhere, and my body started doing stuff that I wasn't telling it to do. And I went, okay, I earned it. Like, I earned it.
yeah.
But that's the weirdest thing. Fighting, I'm not discrediting anybody, but anybody can brawl. Anybody can just wing punches, get a lucky punch. But I'm like, jujitsu, you have to know, the mental aspect of it. I've been thrown around by guys that are half my size, which is weird for me
Right.
because I'm not small. So I'm like, when that happened,
How are they doing this?
I was like, I have to know how this works. And you have to know how to not rely on the weight and be able to use it. And there's so many different aspects. Like, I haven't been able to roll for 2 months and I am dying to get to class. And I think for
Oh,
me, seeing you in a gi was really cool because, most people don't know it. And I'm just going to throw it out there too. Like, the middleweight champ, Dave Mundell, is a black belt in jiu-jitsu. That's kind of weird being in a sport where you're a bare knuckle fighter, but he's done the MMA side. You haven't. This hasn't been something you've really gone into. And I think it kind of speaks for, those future plans without saying, you already said, like, maybe I will, get in the UFC, get a couple fights and come back. Like, maybe that'll work. But I think it's more about the aspect of you're training yourself differently mentally. Like, and having somebody like Joey, not only as the husband, training partner, but somebody who has been on the journey for a long time, who's been through and gotten to that brown belt status that very few people get to. I love your drive and just saying, I wonder if I could be the fastest.
right.
Because if anybody was going to do it, it'd be you. Because you're like, let me look. It took 6 years, 5 days for this person. I'll do it in 6 years, 4 days. Like, let's just cut it.
Right. Exactly. And I've been asking people because I know what my school's opinion on it is. So that's probably the most important. And I
Yeah.
know like what Joey's opinion is. But I have seen a couple other people that are like, they unite that little spark, like, hey, and I'm like, well, maybe if I go out there and do something, you just never know. You never know what's gonna go up. But I would be the person, and it's still there. So I'm not giving up on like, oh, it'll happen when it happens. I'm definitely not that person, and I don't have that mindset. I'm like, how can I convince my professor and everybody at the school that I deserve this blue belt now and then this purple belt now? So I'll find a way for sure. And if anybody can do it, it would definitely be me. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, there's even another girl there who's a black belt, and she had like hundreds and hundreds of medals, and I was like, whoa, you can get medals in this like. And so now and so then after I drill them about this whole timeline and like the process and the steps and stuff, I'm like, but can you compete as a white belt? And they're like, oh yeah. And I'm like, can you get medals as a white belt? I'm like, yeah. So I'm like, yes, let's go. So I mean, I'm sure if I walk back with like 30 medals, I have to be a blue belt by then, It
And
would be just it will happen.
I like the mentality, and it's funny because when you get to blue belt, I got to, say 10 days ago, I got to be present for one of the people that helped me in my, has helped me in my journey get his black belt. And it was a
Aw.
surreal experience because shout out to you, Ryan. I know you'll watch this, so congratulations once again. Um, when I got my blue belt, my professor that I've known for years, who's been, family to me. It wasn't just like, oh, jujitsu, because he was always like, you got to do jujitsu, like you will love it. And I was like, nah. And then I did it, and then I had a kid almost break my arm, and I went, nah, I'm never doing that again. Like no, there's no reason. And now it's like, that there's gonna be injuries that come with it. There's gonna be pain. And I just remember, this is, everybody close your ears because this is gonna get a little intense, but he grabbed me, he pulled me in, and he goes, don't you fucking quit on me. He
Oh
goes, we have
wow.
put too much work into you. It's not just about you anymore. Like, this journey as a white belt it's kind of about you and kind of about them. I was like, but once they get you to that blue belt status, like it's an individual sport, but you do it as a family, you do it as a team. And anytime I've wanted to quit, I've heard that in my head. And I was like, all right, let's go. And, have some really good matches. And it was really cool to see that. So I will encourage anybody listening, try jujitsu, even if you don't watch fighting. You
Yep,
might get hit in
absolutely.
the face. You might still take a foot in the face. You might lose a tooth. You might get a black eye. But it's like a badge of honor at that point because you're just like, I still haven't gotten a black eye. Almost 4 years, no black eyes. And I was like, that's
That's
I'm gonna
funny.
get
I'm dealing right now. My feet have like all these burns, like these rug burns on
the
it. And
mat
I'm
burn,
like,
yeah.
whoa, my knees and my elbows. I'm like, what is this? Like, whew. But I've talked to everybody in there too. And they're like, yeah, it's like that for a month and then you get used to it, it goes away. I'm like, oh wow, that's it. So it's like, man, something like you might, just really stay with like everything, like 2 or 3 weeks a month, and then really give it an honest approach. Cause the first couple days are hard or might be like intense, like,
Oh yeah.
just dumping knowledge on you and just dumping all this stuff. Like for me, I know these submissions, so I'm trying to get them. I'm very aware of them. But then,
But
that was what my professor taught me was my first lesson is position before submission. And I was like, oh, now that I'm really getting that, now it's, it slows it down. And then you see the art and you see how amazing it is that these like small movements mechanically from your body can just make this chokehold or this move, just that much more quicker and effective.
and that was the crazy part is that I watched MMA for over a decade. I said, I know how to do a Kimura. I know how to do an armbar. I know how to do a triangle until you do jujitsu. And then you go, you have to do what?
Right.
No, that doesn't work. And I remember I went to a Hoist Gracie seminar and Hoist was talking about the armbar. He's like, you should not have to bend the arm. He's like, pinch the knees, pull. He's like, that's it. And I just went, but I thought they were like cranking it and you're doing this and that. And you really like have to unlearn everything you thought you knew. And I think that's the best part. And probably the hardest part is telling your mind to shut up
Right.
and saying, whatever they said I did wrong. Got it. Not, but I think, but so and so. No, that's what I
Right.
did wrong and do it.
And that kind of like segues into what you were saying before with like these MMA people transitioning over to boxing, but still hitting on the ground. And a lot of people will kind of give them like, I don't know what to say it, like maybe an understanding. We're like, oh, they're used to it. They train so hard. And it's like, yeah, I train so hard to be a boxer too. But when I go to jiu-jitsu, you don't see me getting in a spot and then punching someone in the face and being like, oh, I forgot. It's a different sport,
Yeah.
It's a different sport. And if you're training for something, you have to be able to have like the mental capacity to like soak in every rule, like a chessboard. It looks like checkers. It could be chess, but the pieces on it, you can't have the same moves. So I think it's very important and cool to learn those things. And it really puts the control, like anyone who's done jiu-jitsu should have total control over their body and know like that is a key component in being in control, breathing, and being aware of everything playing its part.
Mm-hmm. And it is chess. They they always used to talk about the UFC being human chess, but no, it's jujitsu because you have
Right.
to think ahead without thinking too far ahead. You
Yep.
focus on one. I've done it so many times. I'm like, I'm just going to go for this straight arm lock. And I'm like, I'm not paying attention to anything. I'm not paying attention to my base or where I am. And I get swept and I go, you gotta do everything else too. So
Right.
listen, I have a chessboard in the car at all times. So that metaphor worked out perfectly for me. It's always been in there since the day I got my driver's license. It's always been in there because you never know when you're going to need that. And
Right.
so I will end it on that. Britton, it's an absolute pleasure. Like I said, getting to see you after the Knucklemania fight, the snow globe thing that we always discuss.
I know.
And I think that's a really cool thing, to keep that going. And I hope you continue to keep that going. I saw some pretty cool gifts come your way, around Christmas. And I know how crazy and hectic the holidays are. And for you to make the time, it really does mean a lot to, me, the show, and hopefully anybody watching, because again, BKFC Strawweight champion. It's 5 days before Christmas, and you're sitting down with me for an hour, while the dogs go by, while the kids go by, while Joey looked like he was doing laundry. I was like,
I know, right? We're just normal people at the end of the day, but we all have greatness inside us somewhere.
And I really respect that. So now's the time I save for you to talk about the sponsors, the people who get you, where you're going, and what we expect to see from you next year, because I know you won on that Knucklemania card and you're going to keep pushing for it. So I'll even ask you at the end, who do you want that person to be if they give you the fight?
I know. That's a lot. As far as sponsors go right now, just big shout out to Ray Neff, out in California, in Southern California. He does owns his own metal fabrication company, and he has just been someone who's gone from a sponsor to a friend to a family member, and so super just happy to have those connections, and I'm just really so thankful for it. There's definitely a lot of other people that play an important part, but just want to give him a special shout out. So you guys go check him out, as well as in Pompano Beach. I have Cultura Tattoo, who just did my awesome
I was gonna say yes.
Yeah, so if you guys are in that Miami area, definitely go check him out. His black and gray realism is off the charts. But yeah, just really thanks to all my friends and family and you, just for listening to my story. Really makes me kind of burn brighter. So I really appreciate that. Yeah, Knucklemania, to piggyback off that, I definitely feel like I should fight on it because I was the main event for the first one, and I fought on the second one. But unfortunately, I do not think that's how the cards are going to play out, because Virginia is opening up at the end of March. And so that's kind of what they said to me. And, I don't know. I'm always that person that I cannot take no for an answer. So it's kind of do I want to listen to them and just wait till Virginia? Or do I want to press my buttons with, really with Jenny Savage is really who I would want in Knucklemania. Would be awesome.
I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming.
Second round, maybe first round, even knockout. Get the hell out of here. So I would love that, but it's a weird balance. It's I don't know how I feel about it, and I have told everybody honestly. It does change day by day, so don't hold me to it, because the thing I'm sticking to is I'm trying to enjoy the holidays with my family and my friends, and Christmas is just in a few days. And then when January 1st comes around, I bet you guys can guarantee on me, no problem, I will have some sort of plan and be just attacking it full force. But so far, I've just been man, but it's really been dragging. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely been dragging. I'm I'm just going to enjoy the holidays and, just enjoy not having anything on the to-do list. So really kind of trying to soak that up while it lasts. But January 1st, I'm just planning, we'll see, but it's going to be involving getting a fight. So haven't done it yet. I'm kind of that person that's well, my phone's going to ring, I'm it will ring and I'm going to answer it and it's going to be on, but my phone hasn't rung. So I don't know that people aren't calling me right now. So I don't know if they're scared or don't know what's up, but if not, I'm cool with it until January 1st.
And I think, they're just letting you have your time for Christmas, being the first Christmas of the champion. I just imagine in that moment right there, just the belt instead of a star at the top of the tree, just wrapped around the top of the tree.
I know. I'm so upset. That's so cool. I really wanted to do our Christmas cards, some cool special thing with the belt. And I've just been so busy and so crazy with back-to-back stuff and just really making the focus on friends and family and getting Joey all squared away. But I didn't get to make the Christmas cards. And now with 5 days ago, I'm it's just pointless now. But I really wanted to do is going to be the coolest Christmas card ever. But, it just means I'll have to win the belt or defend it again next year so I can send them out for 2023.
That's what I was saying. I was you just got a whole year ahead of you. Just hold on to the belt and you're fine. No pressure, no pressure. But I think for you, that's something that's just going to drive you even more. So,
exactly.
The same thing on our end for the sponsors. La Barba Cubana, one of my good friends, makes amazing beard care. I won't use really anything else. So I literally bought one of those things that holds nail polish and it's just full of beard care oil. Like it's kind of excessive, but it works and it keeps it nice and, refreshed and not smelling like a beard usually does. Anybody who knows. Fat Boy Jiu-Jitsu makes some amazing gear out of Orlando area. Some fun shirts, some gis that are, kind of designed for the bigger guys. So guys, go check that out. At Tim Makes Knives on Instagram, another good friend who loves forging knives. So he makes some really cool stuff on there and does some custom work. So if you guys are looking for something special, can't really find anywhere else, go check him out. Bertzo's Baked Goods. Again, Bertzo's Bake Shop in Orlando, an amazing friend from high school who we reconnected after all these years. And then, of course, the newest sponsor of the show is Tales of a Concert Junkie. Obviously, music is near and dear to my heart. And a lot of their shirts have, mental health aspects or how important music is to you. There are some shirts that talk about politics. And you can guess there's an F word to start it, then politics. We can all figure out what that means. But for some people, politics gets a little crazy. So if you guys go check out Tales of a Concert Junkie, use the promo code Quiggin Out, you get 15% off your order. So they make some really cool stuff. But on behalf of myself, Combat Press, and really just the champ, I got to say this is our end of the year show. We made it special. 4 out of the last 5 people who have been on the show have been champions. 3 of them have been women. And to me, that's really important and shows the expansion and really what the sport has become and continues to thrive and continues to shine and give you guys a platform where you're not just the girl, you're the badass and you're the BKFC Strawweight champion. So thank you so much. And I really appreciate your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Everyone have a happy holiday and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, guys. Hey guys, don't forget to hit the subscribe, little bell, keep you up to date on all things Quiggin Out. Thanks again.